I'm going to ask you a personal question, and my hope is that you'll be totally honest with me. I know we just met, but the truth is, we don't have a lot of time for small talk. So, you in?
Yep.
Awesome. So by a show of hands, how many of you here hate being wrong? Anyone moderately okay with it? Where are all my people who love to be right? It's okay to admit it. I have been known to leave my signature claw marks on people, just dying to prove my rightness. What if I told you that being wrong is one of the best things that could happen to you? Can we get some help here? I think I heard a gasp in the audience. Trust me, I get it. I remember the first time that I heard this quote, "Would you rather be right or happy?" I remember thinking, is this a trick question? Now let me be clear, there is nothing wrong with being right. I mean, heck, I perfected it. But it's our need to be right that has not only caused a great divide in our world, but also within ourselves. Let me explain. So I think by now, we have all bared witness to the divisiveness that occurs when we hold so white-knuckled onto our beliefs about ourselves, each other, and the world. But have you ever thought about what happens when you hold so tightly onto your beliefs about yourself? Especially the ones that tell you that you're not enough, that you'll never measure up, that you'll always be alone, you'll always be depressed. Fill in your belief. We hold on to these as if they're badges of honor, and then we protect them under lock and key. And while we ask for other people to be more open-minded and to see things from a different perspective, we should also be asking the same thing of ourselves. I remember it was the third week of the lockdown, and it was a typical global pandemic morning. Thankfully, Starbucks was considered an essential business, thank you, and I had headed out to get my very essential quad venti extra hot soy latte. I live in LA. And I remember I was driving home and I was sitting at a red light, and all of a sudden, I started to feel the fear and panic and anxiety of people everywhere. But then this wave of calm just started to move through me. And I heard myself say aloud, nonchalantly, "Thank God for my trauma." Well, on actually hearing myself say those words out loud, my body had this visceral reaction, and all of my emotions started to rise, and the only thing I knew to do in this moment was to just shed tears. As you can imagine, when someone goes through something like childhood sexual abuse, gratitude isn't an emotion that you'd normally associate with it. And trust me, I didn't either, as evident by my body's reaction. I actually spent years trapped inside a prison of my own making, my mind. I was 7 years old when I was left in the care of my friend's parents for the day, and then they left me in the care of someone else who didn't care for me. From that day forward, all of my thoughts and beliefs about myself and the world were radically shifted and shaped. Nobody cared for me. I wasn't important enough to protect. Nobody saw me. It was my fault. The world out there wasn't safe. Day by day, these beliefs started to build walls around me until one day, I couldn't see beyond those walls. One wall was built from shame. One wall, guilt. One, fear. And another, mistrust. I had become imprisoned by them, and I saw the world only from the perspective of those four walls. And what's crazy is that I didn't even realize that I was seeing the world through this lens. This is what I call invisible beliefs. They're so deeply embedded in you that not only are you unaware that you have them, but you don't even realize that there's a possibility for a different belief out there. This is literally all you know. And as you might imagine by the name invisible, they weren't the easiest to find. I actually didn't discover them until I was in my 20s. I was living in New York City at the time. I was a struggling actor, and I remember it was one late night after a restaurant shift, and I was back in my apartment. I was sitting on a floor, I had a book in front of me, and I was surrounded by candles. I had electricity and furniture, but I'd always been one for the dramatics, and my heart had just gotten ripped out. I was sad. Apparently, this is what sad people do. And so really all I was trying to do was just escape the thoughts in my mind. As I continued to read, I realized that something inside of me was awakening. There was more for me out there, more than I could see. I wasn't sentenced to this life that I had been living. And so every night after work, I would rush home and I would dive back into the pages of this book. And then one day, it felt like everything shifted. And I know that this might sound crazy, but it was as if this small beam of light just suddenly appeared on the wall. And the closer that I got to it, I realized that that light had always been there. But there was just something covering it. And when I got closer, I realized that it was just a piece of fabric. And so I pulled it aside, and all of this light began to pour in through a window. Here I had been trapped inside this room, behind these walls for years, and there was a friggin' window. And guess what? It could be opened. And so I opened it, and my entire world opened up. I wasn't sentenced to a life of suffering and struggling. I could actually make different choices. And so I climbed out that window and I jumped, right? No. I actually sat on that window's ledge for years, imagining what lay out there, what the possibilities were for me. You see, I wasn't quite ready to leave all that I had known, my comfort zone. And we all do that, you know? We stay in places way past their expiration date. It's not our fault. According to neuroscience, our brains are hardwired to seek familiarity, to seek patterns, to seek predictability, comfort. And so anytime that your brain has the possibility of something new, a new belief, a new goal, a new habit, your brain wants nothing to do with it. And so it will try to convince you of every reason why staying right where you are is better. It makes your brain feel safe, and it makes it feel secure. Almost like an old security blanket. It's all ratted, tattered, and torn. It doesn't keep you warm anymore. It's filled with holes, but you've become attached to it, and you know exactly where those holes are. And so I stayed there for a while, and what I realized one day after I heard something that I wasn't expecting to hear, I was finally inspired to move. And so I put a tippy toe out, clear. I put another tippy toe out, good. And I jumped. And this is what leaving behind an old perspective for a brand new, empowering one feels like. So you might be wondering, what changed for me? Well, my circumstances didn't, but the way that I looked at them did. And then everything changed. My imperfections became the most beautiful parts of me. My trauma became my greatest teacher. My pain became an invitation to my healing, and my vulnerability became my superpower. So how do we change our perspective? First, you must recognize that your beliefs no longer serve you, and you no longer like the view. 2, question your beliefs. Are they yours or are they somebody else's? We have inherited other people's beliefs since the time that we're kids, and then we take them on as our own. And then we create entire belief systems based off of one experience, and then we go seeking evidence to prove that we are, you guessed it, right. Find evidence to disprove your limiting beliefs. 3rd, be willing to think one new thought. You don't even have to believe it, just think it. When I was willing to believe that there was more for me that I couldn't see, guess what? That more started showing up. And last, and this one is the ultimate power move. You must take responsibility and accountability for your life, for how you look at it, for how you show up for it, and how you respond to it. You see, it's much easier to blame somebody else, blame something else for why you're not happy, for why your life looks the way that it does. Because when we blame other people, we don't have to take risks. You don't have to extend trust and risk being let down. I don't have to implement change and risk failing. We don't have to look within and risk not liking who we see. And so when I realized that I had control over my life, I got into the driver's seat. And man, the views are incredible. My room is now decorated by 4 new walls: self-compassion, self-trust, hope, and I leave the last one blank for growth, however it wants to appear. Oh, and there is a door. Now, I know that none of these steps are easy, but it wouldn't be called growth if it were. And the more that we fight against it, the more that we struggle. Every time that you continue to hold white-knuckled onto your old beliefs, you push the opportunity for growth away. You push people away. Every time that you hold onto your rightness, you lock yourself inside a room alone with only your rightness. So remember I told you that I heard something that finally inspired me to climb out that window? It was a quote from Anais Nin, and she said, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." And so my question for you today is, are you ready to grow? Are you willing to not believe everything that you think? Are you courageous enough to be wrong